Hi, Michael, and thanks for making it on. How's London, and how are you finding things here?
Well, I'm here with the family doing the touristy things, the Tower Bridge and the pomp and circumstance of Buckingham Palace and all the touristy things, and it's been fun.
So let's start with MP3Tunes.com. When did you first start thinking about music in the cloud, and how did this project take shape?
Well, more than a decade ago, I had the thought that all music's going to be stored online, or in the cloud, as they call it now. They didn't call that 10 years ago. But it was clear to me that the advantages of having all of your music on the internet are so amazing, right? Your music is safe, and it's available everywhere, and you can organize it in an infinite number of ways. That's clearly how the world's going to look. With MP3Tunes, which I started 5 years ago, it's actually a revisiting of a concept that we first launched at MP3.com, which was my first digital music company, called My MP3. Back then, we launched a cloud service that would take your CDs. You'd pop them into your computer, and it would immediately recognize them and store them online so you could listen anywhere. It was a brilliant service, and it worked around one of the big limitations back then that nobody had broadband, right? People had 14.4 modems or 28.8 modems, or just getting 56K modems, and so uploading music as we do today was really impractical.
And MP3Tunes is a music locker. So how does the idea of actually a hard drive in the cloud pan out for you? Is it hard to implement? Is it hard to maintain? Or are the technical limitations gone now completely?
Well, it's a massive data problem. So it's not trivial. We store hundreds of terabytes of music files, more than 100 million files. So it's a very large data storage problem. Now, of course, technology keeps getting cheaper, so that's a good thing. But it's still an amazing challenge. And that's also, it's not just because of the quantity. There are people that store much more data than we do. Carbonite and backup services like that. But what's different about music is that with music, it's about repeat usage. It's not, I'm going to dump my PowerPoint files into a folder and maybe I'll access them once ever in my life. That's more typical backup. But with music, you want to listen to the same things over and over on multiple devices and multiple screen sizes and multiple formats and multiple bit rates. And that really is a very unique problem when it comes to media. I describe it this way. You're not going to view the same PowerPoint file 100 times. You're not going to watch the same video file 100 times, but you may listen to the same music file 100 times. And so music is a very unique beast and requires some supreme focus.
And a big part of the appeal of MP3Tunes are the partnerships you have forged, both with hardware and software providers. So the service relies on open APIs, but how do you approach people like Logitech or Roku to get your service onto their device?
Right. So people initially, when they hear what we do at MP3Tunes, which is allow people to store their entire music library on the internet, they first think, oh, that's nice for backup and safety. And that's true. But really, the real value is making their music available everywhere. Everywhere. This means every smartphone. This means PCs, laptops. This means your home set-top box or video player, or even future devices like your eyeglasses or your wristwatch or anything that's connected to the internet. We want to get your music to. So the concept that we have is called an API, and what this is a standard way that any developer can build an interface for their device. So if you're making a home device or a car device, you can actually build an interface directly into our service. I don't think one company, even if it's as brilliant as Apple, can build every device in your life, right? You're going to have some from Dell and some from Google, Android, and some from Apple, etc. And the only way to get music to all of those places is to have an open invitation for anyone to come read the rules and the licenses, sign up, and be able to build that interface. And that's what we have. And it's one of the really unique things. And because of that, we actually have very widespread support on a lot of different devices. I mentioned smartphones, so we have an iPhone app and an Android app. But also we're getting into home devices like internet radios from companies like Logitech. Another one is a company called Roku, which makes a video player, which is very popular in the U.S. They only sell in the U.S., so you may not have heard about it if you're in the U.K., but it's hugely popular. And with all of these companies, sometimes they contact us, sometimes we contact them, but ultimately they look at our API and build an interface for their device using the commands that are in our API so that they can say, hey, give me the username and password, and I'll give you that entire person's music library. This is their artist, albums, playlists, cover arts, everything about their music.
And the partnership with Roku is pretty recent, but do you have any figures as to how the take-up has been so far? Because, the concept of music on TV is something that has been pretty unexplored so far. I mean, Apple tried to do it with the Apple TV, but it was pretty much a failure in the sense that it's a very niche product. It's only limited to music you have on your Mac. So how are users taking on to this new feature?
Well, we launched with Roku about, 3 or 4 weeks ago, so it's still very new. But the adoption has really surprised both of us. And let me explain what I mean by that. The Roku is a small device the size of a ham sandwich, and it's built as a video player. The reason most people buy it is to watch Netflix videos. So if you're signed up for Netflix, where they normally send you via the mail DVDs, if you have the Roku box, you can stream it via the internet right to your TV. So it's very useful for that. And this is why I think they've sold 700,000 in the US, a big number. So we were wondering how interesting music would be on a video device. Well, it turns out it's hugely popular. Their third most popular app, I think, is Pandora. Their fifth most popular app is ours, MP3Tunes, which allows you to listen to your whole music library on your TV. Now, it's not coming from your home media server as, geeks might do. Instead, it's coming from the internet. So you simply plug in this device. It's very simple to set up. You add the MP3Tunes channel, right? Because this is a video box, so it's described in a method that TV users might understand. And there's your artists, your albums, your playlist, the same thing that you see on iTunes. So we actually take your iTunes content and make it accessible on this device. We've had, I think it's around 10,000 signups already in the first few weeks. What's interesting is that the average listening time is 14 songs, which is an amazing number. 14 songs. On the web, we have a web player too that people can go and listen to their music on. There we see the average around 6 to 7 songs. Yeah. So people are listening to it considerably more when it's on their home entertainment system, and it kind of makes sense, right? Because that's probably the best speakers in your house, and it's probably the centerpiece of your living quarters. So it does make sense, and I think music in the home entertainment system, is going to be a real growth opportunity for digital music in the near future. And MP3Tunes and MP3.com are both enterprises that are really rooted into music. But you were talking in This Week in Startups about your beginnings, and you actually got into MP3 almost by chance because you actually were seeing the word MP3 coming up in your search results of the engine you were working with at the time, and you actually decided to explore this field. So from there, how did you end up getting really into this field, and what drove you into pursuing a field that is really quite hard to break and quite complicated in terms of licenses? Right. Well, I don't consider myself a music guy. I mean, maybe people consider me a digital music guy, but I consider myself a technologist. I went to school and studied cognitive science, the study of intelligence, and I did some programming. So I kind of am a geek. Although I don't program anymore. But that gives me the perspective of looking at this from a technology, looking at the music industry from a technology viewpoint, not from this is the way the industry has always operated. And this has given me, I think, a lot of fresh ideas, which helped grow MP3.com into the largest digital music company in the world, which I end up selling to Universal Music for about $400 million. And this was a company I started, in the extra room of my house. How I stumbled onto MP3 was I was running a search engine called Files.com, Filez.com, and I saw people searching for this thing called MP3. And my analysis was quite simplistic. Said, well, if people are searching for it, there must be some opportunity there. So I went and bought the MP3 domain name, MP3.com, and turned it on. And the very first day, there was 10,000 unique visitors. And we didn't put out a press release. There was really not a lot at the website. I knew then that there was a big consumer trend happening. And one of my previous businesses had been a failure. I'd bet on digital cameras, and they were slow to get adoption. This would have been in the mid-'90s. And so that taught me an important lesson, which is follow the trend, right? You must, it's not enough to be smart. It's not enough to work hard. It's not enough to have the right strategy. You must also have the right timing. And so with that in mind, I thought, you know what, MP3 is the right time. When I launched it, it was still very much in hacker land and esoteric, and only geeks were interacting with MP3. But I knew it would go mainstream because of the huge value to consumers.
And an interesting thing, you talked about timing, and MP3Tunes is a service that has been around for about 5 years, as you mentioned, but it really got a massive press push in the last 2 to 4 months. And I wonder, why is that? Did you actually deliberately decide to open up to the world a little bit more? I mean, I've read reports on French blogs and Italian blogs, and they're quite recent. So was there a deliberate decision to actually take the timing of the cloud services that is right now and try and expand the scope of the service?
No, I think that, listen, we started the company 5 years ago, which in the tech world is a long time. And when I started MP3Tunes, a lot of people said, you're making a mistake because Apple's going to own digital music forever, and their DRM is going to be pervasive. And DRM, digital rights management, really defeats the world that I want. I want your music to be on every device. Well, DRM restricts it to only certain devices. And so that was really controversial when I started the company 5 years ago. And a lot of people said, no, Apple's going to control it. And I said, no, I think consumers will eventually get open formats. And so I think it took a couple years, but Amazon started selling open formats and Apple started selling open formats. And now, especially in the United States, there's no DRM, or at least related to music. So getting back to your point about, hey, why are you reading about MP3Tunes now? Well, I think the timing is right now. That broadband is very pervasive. Smartphones are now powerful and coming with 3G, unlimited data access. Not everywhere, but that's definitely coming. And those are all positive factors that I think are contributing to cloud music really being a trend. I mean, I opened the newspaper today in London, and there's one of the headlines in the tech section about Carphone Warehouse launching a music everywhere initiative today. So it's not just MP3Tunes. I think you can't control trends that much, right? You can maybe help them grow a little faster, right? But you really can't influence macro trends unless you're an Apple or a Google, right? Who has massive reach, massive marketing budget, and things like that. And a small company like mine couldn't do that. So I really think it's time that cloud music, people understand what it is. I mean, when I would talk about cloud music 5 years ago, people wouldn't know what I was talking about. Today, I don't even bother to define, cloud music is storing all of your music on the internet. I don't even bother to define that anymore. And that I think shows you that at least with the internet savvy people, the time is right for cloud music.
And the music industry is pretty cautious about these new cloud technologies. I mean, they seem to be pretty okay with the streaming services that pay a license fee for every stream, but they're pretty cautious about actually striking contracts with you guys, for example. And you also got sued by EMI. So what is the basis for the lawsuit? What is at the core of their problem with your company? And when do you think this is going to get resolved?
So EMI Records, a UK-based record label, has sued us. They sued us 3 years ago. It's been dragging on forever, costing a boatload of money for both sides. More for them than for me, but still a considerable amount of money. Listen, I think my view of the future of music is different than the record labels. The record labels would like a world where every time you put the play button on any device, your smartphone, your TV, your car radio, your personal computer, the cash register rings. I'm not sure that's what consumers want. It's surely not what I want. I don't mind buying music, but when I buy it, I don't want to pay every time I listen to it again. And I think the record labels want to license every device manufacturer, every internet company to support that. And I think that if it's your music, it should play everywhere. And you shouldn't have to pay repeatedly over and over and over and over for music. I think that's what the battle with EMI is. They've said in their court papers that we enable piracy and all this kind of stuff, but that's complete bunk. We're the only online storage that I know that has no sharing. By this I mean, if I take my music files and I put them on Microsoft SkyDrive or Apple's iDisk or Google Docs, right, which are all online storage, there's a little checkbox you can check that says public. And if you check it, your entire music library is open to the whole world for free copying. No limitations whatsoever, right? That's standard. With pretty much every online storage guy out there offers sharing. We're one of the few that doesn't offer any sharing, never have, right? Where every account is password protected. The only way to get, to listen to music, much less download it, is if you have the username and password. The same security your bank uses for money. And so, listen, we're responsible. I know the industry may not share my vision of the future, but we are responsible. And I think the locker can have a lot of benefit for the industry. But unfortunately, they forced us into a very adversarial relationship, right? They forced us to go to court. And later on in this year, the court's going to decide. And they're either going to bankrupt MP3Tunes and put us out of business and wipe me out personally, because the record labels are suing me personally as a vindictive tactic, I think. Or I'm going to win, and we're not going to need a license from the record labels. And everyone in the tech world will attempt to copy MP3Tunes by offering their own user-uploaded cloud service without getting a license. So it's a big battle, and it will be decided later this year in U.S. courts, I believe.
And in a way, you've pushed the boundaries. You've always pushed boundaries in terms of what the industry wanted to do and what you wanted to do. So was this a conscious decision, or were you always trying to find the best service for the consumer, and that ended up clashing with the vision of the record labels?
Yeah, that's a good question. I do really look at this from a consumer viewpoint, right? When I launched MP3.com, I said, people want to download full-length songs. Let's give them full-length songs, even if it's from independent artists, not the major record labels. People want MP3, they want full-length songs. So I do think it is about giving the consumers what they want. Listen, I believe consumers will get what they want. And if you don't do it legitimately, then consumers will do it illegitimately, right? If you don't sell songs, then they'll pirate them. If you don't sell movies online, they'll pirate them. And I think it's the same with music lockers. If the industry is going to have to deal with music lockers, maybe they can deal with it in court and win. But if they don't, they're going to have to deal with it from a very weakened position where the music locker companies like mine won't be required to work with them. I think there are ways that we could work together. But I guess, you're right that, a lot of times giving consumers what they want is at odds with the music industry's view of how they want the future.
Let's talk about the business model for MP3Tunes. So what are the various business models you're implementing on the site? And is there a way where you can actually help the industry in terms of helping artists sell more tracks and helping artists sell more tickets?
Today, MP3Tunes has what's called a freemium model, which means that we give away a certain level of service for free. Today, that's 10 gigs of music storage for free. And at, 4 megs a file, that's, a couple thousand tracks. So it's a significant amount of music. If they want more than 10 gigs, then they pay us $40 a year, and we give them 50 gigs, and there are higher price tiers as well. And so obviously we're hoping that some percentage of those people pay that subscription fee. So it's a classic subscription model today. I do believe there will be considerable cross-sell, upsell opportunities in the future. Because when I know all the music that you have in your personal library, and not only that, but I know what you listen to on a regular basis. I know what concerts you might be interested in. I know what new music you might be inclined to buy. So it's incredibly valuable data that I think can be mined successfully to generate additional revenue for the industry. Now, unfortunately, today we're in such an adversarial position with the music industry that it's not possible, But I do think in the future, you will get, a music locker where you get, 5 new tracks added to your locker every month. You get to choose from a library or 2 albums every month or things like that. I do think that it won't just be about listening to your own music, but it will also be about adding new music. So on one end of the spectrum, you have Spotify, which is all new music in the world. And that's fine, and some people want that. But I think there's also room for a middle ground, which is I have my music library, but I want to continually add to it. And I think that's what you'll see emerge around music lockers.
Are you worried about new cloud services coming out in the next year or so? Because it seems like the trend is to actually get into proprietary systems. Spotify, you couldn't use Spotify on a service like MP3Tunes. You probably won't be able to use a service Apple rolls out this year or next year. And the same thing might happen with Google. So do you think that might put you in a disadvantage, or do you think users might just get pissed off with these proprietary deals and turn to a company like yours in order to listen to their music?
Well, I hope that our openness will prevail at the end, right? I mean, surely there are some people that only buy Apple products. That's fine, and they might be happy with an Apple-only service. But I think the world's a big place, and I really like my Android phone, and I want my music on my Android phone, and I'm not sure Apple will ever give you your music on your Android phone because they want to be partial to their iPhone. So I do think that being open to all devices is part of the key vision that I have for cloud music. Now, having said that, for sure, Apple's going to get into this business. Google's going to get into this business. Facebook, Amazon, Yahoo. I don't know. There's going to be others. I mean, it's going to be a big opportunity, and hopefully this is where, our efforts over the last 5 years pay off. I mean, I have more than 500,000 music fans. I'm storing a massive amount of music. I'm building interfaces for, Logitech devices and Android phones and a lot of other devices that are out there. And I think that hopefully that investment will pay off.
And in terms of international development, is MP3Tunes available internationally? And do you think it's safe for international users to use it without risking being sued or anything like that?
It is available. We don't restrict signups. We only operate out of the United States. We don't have any servers anywhere else. We don't restrict signups in any way, so people are free to use it. I think, around half of our users are from the U.S. and half are from outside the U.S. Now, having said that, the world's a big place, and laws, and we're in new territory, so what the laws in certain countries might treat, storing your music online, I have no idea. I can tell you that in the United States, it is legal, and Lord willing, we'll prevail in our lawsuit and prove that in court. But I wouldn't go so far to say it's legal everywhere else. I do think we run a responsible business, and we don't enable piracy, we don't encourage it, and so I think consumers and customers, and even industry people should look kindly at MP3Tunes for that reason.
In terms of mobile integration, you've actually managed to span through a huge amount of devices. You've got an iPhone application, Android is covered, and you also have a way to get files accessed from any device because you have a mobile site on mp3tunes.com. So how does mobile play into your strategy? And do you think that the recent, for example, limits to streaming on 3G that were imposed in the States might affect the way users interact with music on their mobile?
Well, I think, today, if you look at some of the more popular services like Pandora, Pandora says something like 60% of their streaming is done on mobile devices. I mean, it's an amazing number. So, absolutely, smartphones are going to play a huge role in cloud music, no doubt about that. Listen, when it comes to 3G and streaming, we're going flat rate, right? Yeah, there might be some bumps in the road, but we are going to get to a model where a person pays one fee and they can use their data pipe for whatever they want. And I would suggest that we're actually getting better and better at that. What I mean by that is that today on Android, for example, if you download the MP3Tunes app, every time you listen to a song, it's actually cached locally in your music directory, not in a secret hidden place, but in your music directory, so any music app on Android can access it. And when you go to listen to that music again on MP3Tunes, the software is smart enough to know, oh, I already have that music file on the handset. Let me pull it locally instead of clogging the 3G. So music streaming is not going to be as impactful, I think, on the cellular networks as maybe people suspect. And eventually, there's such robust competition that I think all the mobile carriers will be driven to flat fee data access. I mean, that's what we're banking on, and I think it will play out that way.
And lawsuit aside, where would you like to see MP3Tunes in a year's time?
Well, I'd like us to see on a lot more devices in the home. Set-top boxes, I think, are a really key part, right? I mean, you already have a computer connected to your TV. It just so happens that it's dedicated to video. But there's no reason that couldn't be connected to the internet if it's not already, and be music aware. Music is probably less computationally intensive than video. So I'd love to see us get more involved in the home through set-top boxes or DVRs or things like that. I'd like us to get on a couple more smartphone platforms. We're not on BlackBerry yet, so I'd like us to get on BlackBerry, or our users to write the interface for BlackBerry, however you get there. I think internet radios, they've yet to really take off. Logitech's Squeezebox line is a phenomenal product line. It really is great. They're about $150, $200, maybe a little expensive. This Christmas, you'll see $50 internet radios in the States. And internet radio, doesn't have any local storage. It just does Wi-Fi or wired internet, and it streams all your music from the cloud. And at $50, I think you're now at such a low price point that it's practical for people to have multiple of those devices in their house. So I think that's definitely happening, this Christmas. And then even future devices, like I mentioned, your watches, your eyeglasses. I mean, I want everything to be a music player. Your car. I think the car is probably a tough nut to crack, but it will happen as cars get internet access. You'll be able to stream music to your car as well.
And finally, a lot of entrepreneurs listen to the podcast, and people that lead startups and that kind of thing. So have you got any word of advice for people that are starting a digital music business today?
Well, the music business is extraordinarily tough. I mean, if you look historically over who has made money doing digital music startups, it's a very short list. You probably got a couple blokes from Last FM who did pretty well selling to CBS. I did okay selling MP3.com. But it's a very difficult field because it's very sexy. Everybody wants to do music because it's fun. So I think it's a very challenging field. I would probably tell people to look elsewhere. And I say that because look for areas where sales and revenue is growing up, not down. If you're in an industry where it's contracting, it's difficult to carve out a piece. If you're in an industry that's growing, it's easier to grab a piece. So I would probably counsel them not to, focus too much on digital music unless that's where their heart is. But if you are going to do that, you must be different. And I would contend that you can serve either the consumer or the industry. It's your choice. I think the people that have been successful have all served the consumer. Last FM served the consumer. MP3.com served the consumer. I think you have to give consumers what they want and try to work with the industry, but if there's a choice, always side with the consumer, because ultimately they're going to get what they want on the internet.
Well, it was absolutely great having you on the show, and thanks for taking the time out of your holidays to talk to us.
My pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity.